Hello and welcome to GovFin 2023, Empowering Governments and Modernizing Data. Before I get started with my introduction, I do want to thank two people who have worked very hard, Michelle Savage and David, and I'm going to say his name wrong, I've practiced it 6 times, Tarariano, thank you. I don't know why, it's one of those things that just is not sticking. So my name is Christine Kuglin, and I am the chairperson of the conference committee. I serve as the director of Truth in Accounting at the University of Denver. I also teach at the Sturm College of Law. I teach accounting for lawyers, in the Daniels College of Business, Corporate and Partnership Tax, and in the graduate tax program, Tax Research for CPAs and attorneys. And that's going to play into why I'm here today. The FDTA was passed and signed into law in December of 2022, less than 1 year ago. According to Senator Mark Warner, a co-sponsor of the legislation, the Financial Data Transparency Act is designed to modernize the collection and dissemination of financial data by federal financial regulators, making the information more accessible, more uniform, and ultimately more useful to investors and consumers. The purpose to develop consistent new data standards for more transparent data and better access. And here we are today working together to figure out this legislation, and that is a very good sign, the collaboration and communication. As many of you know, the FDTA is not the first legislation to require machine-readable reporting. The Grant Reporting Efficiency and Transparency Act, the GREAT Act, was signed into law on December 30th, 2019 to modernize and improve federal grant reporting through a standard data structure used by all federal awarding agencies for financial assistance reporting. The FDTA calls for 8 federal agencies to collect data from entities reporting to them in structured machine-readable format, including data reported to the municipal bond market, namely from issuers of municipal bonds. Of course, publicly traded companies have been reporting using machine-readable data since 2009, and even earlier, as early adopters blaze the trail. And that actually explains to you why I am here. For over 20 years, I have worked in tax and corporate accounting settings and also in governmental accounting. One of those roles was as a NASA grant accountant for a university way back in 1998. And even then, I thought that the dollars being spent were hard to track and often seemed lost in the bureaucracy of the university systems. I knew there had to be a better way to make the spending more transparent. In 2009, I went back to school to earn my master's degree. I wanted to teach, and I wanted to share what I had learned for over 20 years in my various roles in different accounting positions. And even as a student, I kept my desire to improve transparency in accounting. In 2009, I was taking a class at Regis University, and I was introduced to a new development, XBRL in financial reporting. And from that point on, 14 years ago, I was hooked. I had the dream that this could be used in government reporting as well. And in fact, here is my research paper I wrote back on the topic in 2010. And the title of it was University Grants and the Extensible Business Reporting Language, Why XBRL is Necessary for Grant Accountability. So I've been dreaming about this for a very long time. After finishing my degree, I went on to teach classes to college students. In every course, I would make lessons come to life by taking the headlines of the day, going to Edgar, exporting financial statements to Excel with a single click, and running analysis in minutes. It didn't matter if the students were in their first accounting course or in their final master's class. They understood of the information, the power of the information presented in a manner they could embrace. However, when I tried to do the same with governmental statements, the point was somewhat moot. Who wants to look at this when they grew up with this? So it was very hard to convince them why they should take a career in governmental accounting. So in 2022, I had the good fortune to be hired by the University of Denver to run their Truth in Accounting project, the brainchild of Sheila Weinberg, who's here today. I expressed that if I was chosen for the position, my research would focus on improving analysis in government reporting. Timing was on my side. The FDTA was enacted, and that was fulfilled a 15-year dream to see government reporting made more transparent for future generations of students, accountants, citizens, and taxpayers. So that's why I'm here today. As a teacher, I have no stake in this game other than to have better tools to teach future generations the story of governments as told through their financial documents. Those documents can be easily accessible, searchable, and available to all. So before I introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsors for this event who have contributed their support, not only for today's conference, but throughout the year on many XBRL US initiatives. During breaks and lunch, please visit our exhibitors, DFIN, DataTrax, IGM Technology, and Iris Business Services. Thanks to them for their support, as well as additional sponsor support from the University of Michigan Center for Local, State, and Urban Policy, otherwise known as CLOSUP, DACBON, NovaWorks, and Workivia. I'd also like to give a special thanks to KPMG for hosting today's program in this fantastic facility. And I want to invite John, is it Ing, thank you. I want to make sure I didn't goof that up, to come up and say a few words. John is the Managing Director in KPMG's Department of Professional Practice, focusing on accounting for and auditing of state and local governments. John.
Good morning, all. Just wanted to take a minute and welcome you to our offices here in the DC area. As Christine has mentioned, I work in our national office on public sector jobs, concentrating my time on state and local government. So this will actually really impact our clients as we move forward. And to her point and echoing it, having data standards and being able to analyze financial statements quickly and use that in our own risk assessment while we're not primary users of the data will go a long way. And then just making the users of the financial statements' lives easier as they're trying to analyze it for their own particular purposes. So definitely interested in the topics today. Special thanks out to Christine as well as XBRL US in terms of putting together the excellent lineup of speakers we have, the agenda, discussion topics that we're going to go through today. So once again, welcome to our offices here in the DC area, and I'll pass back to Christine.
Thanks. You're welcome. So thank you. And John can attest to how difficult it is to attract students to the accounting profession in general. I'm sure you're all hearing about the pipeline, but specifically to governmental accounting. And so that's a very exciting development. So before we get going, I do have a few housekeeping notes. During the program today, please do silence all electronic devices. To ask questions of speakers during each session, you can either use Slido from your smartphone's browser or use note cards passed to a staff member. Details for Slido are in the bag you received at the check-in table today. You may sit in the meeting space during lunch, and you're also welcome to use the seating in the hall and tables in the cafe area. To receive your CPE certificate for today, be sure to complete the sign-out form included in the XBRL bag you received at check-in and drop it in the box at the credenza at the back of the meeting room before you leave. Please also consider using that sheet to provide any feedback on any session or the entire day of discussion and presentation. Today's event is being recorded and it may be posted by XBRL US. And following today's session, the last session of the day, please join us for a networking reception in the hall outside this space. And then finally, I do want to make another little announcement that the University of Denver is pleased to announce that it would like to host a continuation of this meeting in July 31st, August 1st, August 2nd. And if anybody is interested in serving on a committee to plan that event, it'll be hosted on the campus. And we would love to make it an interactive event, maybe some training sessions, sharing ideas of how this is going to look. It can be on AI, XBRL, anything that you all think would be valuable in helping to move this forward. And we'll include students, we will include any of your employees who you would like to have them participate, but be thinking about it and please reach out to me, Michelle Savage, or to Judy Willard, who is the director of our Truth in Accounting project. Reach out to us and we'll include you in that conversation. So I hope you enjoy the discussions today. Ask questions, provide comments, and engage. That's what's important, that we all have a voice. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Mr. Mark Funkhouser. I only recently met Mark, but he is a true visionary in this matter. Mark Funkhouser is a municipal finance and government performance expert who has spent decades in public service. As the mayor of Kansas City during the Great Recession, Mark made the tough choices to put his city on the path to fiscal sustainability and focused on smart with the money policy approaches to make the city work for regular people. As the publisher of Governing Magazine, Mark continued his commitment to local government through promoting innovation and peer learning across state and local jurisdictions. In 2019, he founded F&A, a consulting firm that supports the work of local governments and their partners through engagement, strategic planning, capacity development, and fiscal analysis. Mark is one of the founders of the International Center for Performance Auditing, the ICPA, and previously spent 18 years with the Office of the City Auditor of Kansas City and 10 years with the Tennessee Division of State Audit. Mark holds a master's degree in social work from West Virginia University, an MBA from Tennessee State University, and an interdisciplinary PhD in public administration and urban sociology from the University of Missouri at Kansas City. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Mark Funkhouser.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christine. And I'm very happy to be here and speak with you all. Everything that I have read about FDTA has basically focused on the investors. What happens for investors? Why is this good for investors? And so on. I want to talk to you about local government and why I think it's good for local government. I want to come at it from a completely different kind of perspective. As you probably gathered from the introduction that Christine gave you, I have basically spent my career working in and studying local government. In my current work and as publisher of Governing, I basically talk to, interview local government officials almost every day. So what my little firm sells is our knowledge about what's on the minds of local officials across the country. All right, Michelle, it's not working.
There we go.
All right.
I'm sorry. Press it hard.
All right. So I see three big problems in local government, and I'm going to work through with you how I think machine-readable financial statements can help local governments grapple with these problems. And the problems are, I believe that every one of them has an underlying structural deficit. They will tell you that they are struggling with trust and with their residents having confidence in what they do. And in fact, that has been declining and declining and declining, even though they have been trying to do more and more with regard to transparency. And as you all know, as Michelle has said, there's a shortage of personnel across government, but especially in accounting and finance. And I think that this can help. So let me walk you through those. The structural deficit. Governments, if you follow, as I have for a long time, decades, local governments, what you see is their realm of responsibility expands and expands and expands. You see mayors now who will tell you that their top priority is homelessness. I will tell you that in 1985, that was not their top priority. They will tell you about the level of social protest and unhappiness. They will tell you about the problems that they're having with their public safety issues, and on and on and on. So this is their role. What we think local governments are supposed to do has gotten bigger and bigger. And they are carrying these huge legacy costs. The two big ones that you know about, pension and OPEB, and infrastructure. Those things are under every one of them, even those that seem to be thriving. Cities in Texas that are growing and booming and, everything's great. If you have an extended conversation with the CFO, he or she will tell you, well, actually, we're having trouble keeping up with demand. We're spending the growth to build, but if the growth slows or stops, we're in big, big trouble. Keeping infrastructure in a state of good repair and so on is just a huge, huge problem for them. And I don't see how they're going to fix this without major, major changes. I mean, you look at a city, say in the north, like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is built for a population of about 680, 700,000. It has a population of about 340,000, and it's not going to get a lot bigger. So they have a footprint, an infrastructure footprint that they have to take care of. And I'm not even talking about climate change yet. This is a big, big problem. So there have been course-correcting reforms. I see two. I see what we did when we finally forced government to put on the balance sheet something reflecting their cost of capital with regard to infrastructure and so on. And then when we finally forced them to put on the balance sheet pension and OPEB, so that we could finally see what the actual balance was. To me, FDTA is a third big change. It's equivalent in my mind to those first two, to reforming the way we account for the cost of capital, reforming the way we account for pensions and OPEB. And the fiscal policy space, while all this is happening, while this structural deficit is happening, while these expanding responsibilities are happening, probably 45 out of the 50 states now have done major preemption with regard to what local governments can do. Their tax base is constrained. There are caps on property tax. There are no caps on inflation, but there are caps on property tax. And so there's pressure, more and more pressure, and there's not an underlying pushback, really, that's very strong. Mike Pagano at the University of Northern Illinois, I think, did a great paper about the fiscal policy space of cities. And what he showed was the more freedom local governments have to manage their own finances, the better off they are actually financially. That's kind of new. We didn't realize that. We have states that are stepping in to oversee and help local governments. But actually, if they can understand their own financial data better, and they can have more freedom to manage it, they'll actually do better. So let me move on to the next big issue, and that's a lack of transparency and trust. If you go back, Eric Berman is here someplace, and I was going through old governing articles about the worthlessness, essentially, of the annual comprehensive financial report, how they were impenetrable, and so on, and so on, and so on. It has been, they are opaque, as I say. And sometimes when I talk to CFOs and budget directors and so forth, I almost get the feeling that that's on purpose. We don't really want to trust people with the data. We want, they can't handle the truth, and so one of the answers was, oh, well, we're going to do popular financial reporting. And so look at those. They are written for children. It's like, we're gonna take you over here in the corner and we're gonna pat you on your head and we're gonna give you this really pretty, nice little thing. And that's not what we need. What we need is better, easier access to the real numbers. We're not going to improve transparency and trust by basically sending people over to the kiddie table. That's not going to work. If you've worked in local government for a while, you know that there are people, labor unions, community activist groups, and so forth, who believe that you are hiding the money. That somewhere in there, down in the basement of City Hall, there is a safe. And in that safe, there is a whole lot of money. And trying to persuade them that that is not true is almost impossible. On the other hand, you have particularly elected officials who will go to you and say, find the money. So they think there's a safe down there too. And they want you to go and find the money to do thus and such. There is no magic pile of money down there, but we can't really persuade people that that is the case without some sort of third-party verification. And I know we have an annual financial audit that comes out ideally 6 months, but in reality, 12 months, 18 months after the fact. But how about if in almost real time, anybody could look at the data? Not the annual financial report, way down the road, but anybody could look at quarterly reports and other kinds of data and get access and feel like they could compare those numbers to other places. How is Dallas doing in comparison to, say, Fort Worth or a place in California, a city in California, a city, Boston? How are they doing? Right now, it would be really, really difficult. It would take a long time to get even 20 annual financial reports and plow your way through them and figure that out. But with machine-readable financial statements, I believe that we can crowdsource the data. We can have lots of people looking at the same time, and we will, I think, increase our ability to grapple with the lack of transparency and the lack of trust. As more and more people can compare notes, look at the data, do it easily, don't feel like they have to have a master's degree in accounting, don't feel like they have to understand technology like some kind of whiz, but they can, as Michelle said, they can pick up their phone and hit a couple of buttons and they can get a pretty good sense and compare it to what other people see. So in my view, what this will do is democratize the data. And it's interesting to me. So I've been, as soon as I got this assignment to do this keynote, I started changing up my interviews with local government folks. And I would say, so tell me about what you think you're going to do with regard to the FDTA. And they would say, what? What is that? What now? I have a friend who will go unnamed who has been a CFO in a couple of cities and now the city manager in a couple of cities. And I wanted to do an on-the-record recorded interview with him for the work that I'm doing here. And so I sent him an email and told him what it was going to be and so forth. And he responded right away. We got the interview. My first question, so what are you going to do? He said, Mark, I didn't know it existed until I got your email. And I started Googling, and this is a guy who's a CFO of a big city twice before he became the city manager of a couple of big cities. And as I went through the interview with him, he said, this is just not on my radar. This is not something I'm going to pay close attention to until after the SEC and others issue their rules. And I said, but don't you want to have a seat at the table? Don't you want to say something about what those rules are going to be? And he said, I got 14 crises that I got to deal with today. I don't think so. But this same guy and many, many others, it's a mantra now in government and especially in local government, we're data driven. We care about the data. Financial data is data. It's, over and over, my pushback is, if you care about the data, then this is something you need to care about because the financial data is data. And then finally, what are we going to do about the lack of people, particularly young people? I think a big key is to modernize it, to make it seem like we're in the 21st century. And it's like everything else that they can do. That's a start. And then the second is to get them to understand that money is power. Now, as Michelle said, I have a master's in social work. Why does one get an MSW? You want to help people. I wanted to help people. I was an earnest young man who wanted to help people. And by accident, I found myself in the Tennessee State Auditor's Office. I was a social scientist among about 300 CPAs, and it was interesting, and I loved the work. It was really fun, and I thought, well, this is interesting stuff. I want a career here, and so I went to TSU, and I got an MBA in accounting and finance. And sitting in those MBA courses, I had this epiphany. Money, knowledge is power, money is power. These suckers have figured out how money works. If I want to help people as a social worker, I need to know how money works. And I think that's a message that we need to get to young people. I have taught budgeting and financial management at various universities. I currently teach at Tulane. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I never, hardly ever, have a student who's in my class because it was their choice. And they're getting a master's in public administration, and one of the core requirements is that they have to take a course in budgeting and financial management. And they don't want to do that. They want to help people and so forth. And I tell them, you can't take care of the people if you don't take care of the money. You can't understand the organization that you're working in and you're trying to manage if you don't understand the money. And they get it. They come out of my classes going, wow, yes, this is stuff I need to know. They have the same epiphany that I had. Shoot, why are we handing all these guys the money power? So knowledge is power, money is power. We can show them that those two things fit together. And we need to increase the focus on the balance sheet. We need to make them see that that matters. To the extent that they get excited about the budget. Well, the budget is nice. It's what we say we think we're going to do, maybe. It's a list of aspirations with dollar signs attached to it. but it's not really what we did. It's not really how we spent the money. That's in the annual financial report. That's where the real action is. And so I think, again, in talking to young people, we can have machine readable financial statements so that they can get to the financial statements, so that they can get to see what this budget or that budget item does to their net worth of their city. That is going to, I think, tip a balance for us with them. We need to connect budgeting and a balance sheet. And that's one of the things, it's been a mantra of mine for 20 years. You know, we don't do it. Take the average, listen to a community meeting, listen to a city council meeting, and you hear a fight about the budget, actually about 1.2% of whatever the budget is. You never hear a discussion of the net worth, but it matters. It matters a lot. I've got two, these are both past books up there. So Doug Detter was a co-author on a book, The Public Wealth of Cities. He is currently one of several co-authors on a book entitled Public Net Worth. And it's a real, it'll be out probably mid-November. But it's this whole focus on the value of looking at the balance sheet and looking at the budget in terms of the balance sheet. And then Gerard Miller wrote for Governing when I was there and still writes. He's got an article coming out in a little bit about this. When I got started talking about the FDTA, it was with an article that I wrote for my own newsletter. One of the articles that I cited in the piece that I wrote was a piece that Gerard wrote really in like January, so right after the thing was passed. He's working on this idea now of a public benefit corporation. He has the idea that once we do this, and all this data from all these cities and counties is machine readable and accessible, that somebody is going to start to monetize it in a way that won't necessarily be in the public interest. And he's arguing that GFOA, NASAC, and other groups ought to come together. He did this in his original article. He's going to do it in the next one, and create some kind of public benefit corporation where they can sell, from the public interest point of view, the data. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that as soon as Michelle asked me to do this keynote, I said to myself and to anybody that I could get to listen to me, we need to do a playbook on this and to show how local governments, why they should know about it. So introduce them to it and then show them how to use it and why it's a good thing, and give them case studies about it. And my little company, we've got, I would say, a little over 10,000 people in local government that we regularly write to and talk about stuff. So we will promote this. We're doing it. So once I got this bright idea, then I have to find a partner. And we're doing it with a company called DebtBook, which is a member of XBRL. If you have ideas or thoughts about what we ought to include in a playbook for local government about the FDTA, case examples we ought to look at, issues we ought to look at, please let me know. And that's it. I'm done, Christine. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, so is this on? Maybe it's not on, but I'll put my teacher voice out there and I'll just raise it a few octaves. So thank you, Mark. Really excellent. We do have a couple of questions. I also want to take just a minute to pitch the last session of the day that will give you case studies. I will be presenting a case study I've done on special districts that was funded by the Mercatus Center. And we'll give you an examples of these, as well as Stephanie Leiser and work that they've done in Michigan. So we will have some firm examples for you at the end of the day. So let me ask you these questions really quickly, Mark. I lost my, had it up, teed up, and then we lost it. So one moment, I apologize. Oh, thank you so much. All right. So the first question is, do you see any special ramifications of FDTA for special district governments?
For special districts, I see the same things that I see for local governments. It's the same kinds of issues. You could almost, I mean, you know, one of the districts that I just did an interview with is the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. Well, they have the same issues as every other local government.
Great. And we'll be demonstrating school districts, metro districts, health district, and a fire district. So we will demonstrate that later today. Then the second question is, which kind of goes to what I'm saying, how will FDTA assist a small park district that rarely goes out to bond, improve their structural deficit if they have to use their resources to file new reports?
Think about, you know, I mentioned that the focus is on investors. Think about your residents or your users as investors. They're paying you taxes, they're paying you fees. If they build a house or buy property in your community or in your district, they're investors. You should do this if you never sell bonds. If you never ever have to do that, this is a way for you to show your residents who are investors and your ratepayers who are investors what you're doing with their money.
Right. Then we have, how do you control for the timeliness problem of local financial reporting? Virtually no cities I know of ever submit audited numbers on time. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, there's a couple of points about that. One, this may make it easier to do the work sooner. The other thing is that most of the data that we, you know, in the disclosures and so forth, doesn't need to be audited at that moment to report it. I mean, the audit will come in and it'll make adjustments maybe, and it'll fix problems maybe, but mostly the data can be available right now. It'll be, you can say this is unaudited at the moment, but it's going to be okay.
Right. Thank you. Is this working now? Switch mic. Switch mics. Is this one working? No. I'll just keep my teacher voice going. So, yeah, I can shout, ask my students, especially if they're in trouble. All right. Is this one? Yes, I can hear that echo. All right. The last question that I have is, why is there so much tolerance for late reporting?
Why is there so much tolerance for late reporting? I don't know why there was tolerance for not reporting on assets. I don't know why there was tolerance for hiding or putting in supplemental parts of the report, the pensions. I think it's just kind of the way it's been. And I think that the late reporting, you know, as long as people tolerate it, it'll happen. One of the groups that needs to be brought in on this and understand again are the residents. You know, and if there are community activist groups and so forth, if we can get them to understand that it's as important to look at the financial statements as it is to fight about that 1% of the budget, we will have increased the speed with which all this stuff happens.
And I agree. And if you're looking for something that looks like this, how many people are going to look at this? So the tolerance is there because nobody looks at it, right? So, and we hope that'll change. So thank you, Mark, so much. This was
Thank
very
you.
informative. All right. So thank you all, and I look forward to sharing the rest of the day with you.